This is our second rodeo about the same book, but the paperback, the beach read.
The beach read is
Beach
out.
read,
I can't
baby.
believe you're having me back.
Oh, well, we love it so much, and there's so much to talk about in the book.
I think I would have felt silly if someone had just come and gone, you're going to do an autobiography. Because I would have
like
said,
Wayne Rooney.
What? Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember he had a 7-book deal when he was about 6?
That's exactly it. Like, I would have been like, no one knows who I am. I'm not old enough or famous enough to do that. And actually, I enjoy that it's not all autobiography.
Yeah.
That then I got to do different, like, jokey chapters and political chapters, and only the bits of my life that actually mean something to me are in the book, not the boring bits that I might have had to put in if it was an autobiography.
Yeah, well, it's a stunning read. It's a brilliant book.
In the book, I talk about, it gets onto about mental health, but really it's the lead up to that, where I had an absolutely mad year, really, where I went from being a completely unknown comedian, just doing very normal gigging around the country, and I was single, and like you say, I was in a flat share, and life felt very simple. And
you were really happy?
I was very happy, yeah. And in the same period of a few months, I met the person who would become my husband, moved in with him, had 2 stepchildren. At the same time as my career, the MASH report stuff went viral. I was getting loads of international attention, which now seems mad, but I was for a few months. Good and bad attention as well. And
that's how attention comes.
It is, isn't it? It's never going to be all good. And it sent me spinning. And I think that year was an incredibly busy year, both personally and professionally. And then exactly a year to the day later, I basically had a nervous breakdown. I had sort of panic attacks for several on one day, which was the day when it happened.
Yours was like an earthquake, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because you had these tremors, and sometimes when you have panic attacks, it lets off enough steam that you don't then bottom out, but yours didn't.
Oh, it was bad, and I'd never had one before, so I really didn't know how to recognise it. All I could describe it as, I felt like I couldn't be in the world, and I didn't know what was happening. I remember my husband was asleep in the chair, and I was with my stepdaughter, and I was like, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go. And I opened the door and I walked out into the street as if thinking that would help, and it didn't help. And I came back in and I woke him up and I said, I don't know what's happening. And bless him, he was amazing, sort of trying to do breathing with me. But it went on for weeks. Actually, it was what I think we would call a nervous breakdown. I definitely appeared mad in the old-fashioned sense of the word. But with time and, coping mechanisms, I sort of came through it.
Yeah, and breakdowns are interesting, aren't they? Because they say, if you hold a grudge for long enough, it's not going to be great for your arms.
Yeah.
And it's the thing, sometimes breakdowns are because we're spinning plates that aren't necessarily authentic, and we're spinning a yarn and a story, hopefully not too cynically or for any nefarious reasons, but we just are, because we all tell ourselves stories.
Yeah.
But when your story is so far away from the truth, or something has happened to you so quickly like it did to you, and it's so far away from who you were, and you didn't have a chance to transition, then one day it just all comes crashing out, because you and the reason you get breathless is because you have nothing left to give, not to everyone else, but even to yourself, which is why you end up doing this thing like walking out the door. A lot of people circle because they want to move, but they don't want to particularly go anywhere. And you're really caught between life and whatever's next.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, I feel like comforted by the science of it. I remember when someone broke down the actual chemical reason why it would happen when it did as well, and that basically I'd been running on high adrenaline for a year, really, like little ups and downs, but at a high level on fumes. And then the day it happened was the day when Christmas had happened, people had come to stay. It was the day when all the people left. I had nothing in the diary for the first time in a year, and that's when it happened, was when you breathe out and you're like, oh, I don't know what.
You probably hadn't breathed out for a year.
For a year, yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. And what's interesting for me is, now having been, riding this bike for quite a while, is that when I read that chapter, it was like, but that was only 2018.
Yeah.
So you had this exponential rise to fame, but it's still now only 2023.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that once you get over one of those hurdles, you go, oh, well, that's that then. For me, I would be going, as a sort of showbiz colleague, I don't know you well at all out of what we do for a living, but we've had a few conversations. I would say, not a red flag necessarily, but watch out, because it's still quite overnight where you are sitting now.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think that was a peak of fame, and I think it's gone down. But I think I realised that I needed it too. Some people might suit being able to live at a certain level of attention and busyness and all that, and I don't think I could hack it. I think my brain wouldn't handle it. So I think I'm sitting quite comfortably.
No, good for you, and I hope you are. I'm just saying, you can never be too late, and these things do come in waves.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that was one wave, and there will be another one,
Yeah.
and you might be at a different point. They say, don't they, in surfing, if you ride the wave too high, it'll go under you, and if you try and get too much out of it, it'll go over you. And what this one went over you. Sometimes you can overcompensate next time around and make not enough of the situation and lose momentum, because you'd rather not risk the opposite. But actually, the key is to just get it,
Absolutely.
which sounds like it feels like that's where you are.
I think so. It still hits me sometimes. I've never had a time as bad as that, but I find it interesting how your brain tricks you, because before I hosted the latest series of Late Night MASH, when I got the job, I didn't feel nervous. I just felt great and confident about it. And all in the lead up, interviewers were like, you must be so nervous. You must be so excited and nervous. And I was like, no, I don't feel nervous. I feel great. And I was like going into it, didn't feel nervous at all. And only the morning that I arrived in the studio on that first record, panic attack.
Not quite.
Not quite. But,
not quite.
Well,
you could smell it, though. You could smell it.
Oh, yeah. I had proper breathing exercises, trying to, exactly. Not blacking out, but.
But you knew you could spot it. If you like.
Absolutely. Heart going 10 a penny.
Yeah.
I had to leave the studio. They were definitely concerned.
Yeah.
I just kept saying to them, I know what to do now. I've got all the mechanisms to make sure it doesn't descend into that. But and then once the recording started, everything was fine, as I knew it would be. But how your brain can put off those feelings and ignore them.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, like you say, but it's not your brain. Your brain informs your biochemistry, but sometimes your biochemistry informs the brain. The brain always sort of pretends to take charge of it all, but sometimes it's not in charge. It's just faking it, hoping that you won't notice it's not actually that way around.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because some people who sit very comfortably on the stage, in front of the camera, behind a microphone, whatever that may be, feel the same level of discomfort and anxiety in real life. And I suppose the key is to get the balance.